standing by. At this time, all lines have been placed in a listen-only mode until the question-and-answer session. Today's conference is being recorded. If anyone has any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the call over to Mr. Jared Liu. Sir, you may begin.
Great. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. You are participating in Marketing and Communications, Part 3, Building and Positioning Your Brand. This is the Brown Bag Lunch webcast series. It's a monthly webcast held at the lunch hour. The trainings leverage local successes by amplifying to a larger audience two model organizations, methods, materials, and approaches. Sessions are planned to last no more than 1 hour, with two presenters speaking on the same topic from slightly different perspectives, each for 10 to 15 minutes, followed by 10 to 15 minutes of questions and answers. Today's session is approved by the ISA for 1 CEU hour. If you haven't already given me your certification number, you can email me after this session. Alternatively, most state landscape architecture boards require only a certificate of completion, which ACT can provide to members who request this. This is a program of the Alliance for Community Trees, and we encourage you to consider joining if you're not a member. We also want to thank our sponsors on the call today, the Home Depot Foundation and the USDA Forest Service. So today's session is Marketing and Communications Part 3, Building and Positioning Your Brand. A brand is a mixture of attributes, tangible and intangible, symbolized in a trademark, which, if managed properly, creates value and influence. Marketing a brand is not a new brochure, a printing budget, direct mail, or a catchy slogan. It's an important strategy to help community groups define their value and services in the marketplace. Pretty brochures, zippy websites, and catchy slogans can be effective, but only when part of a coordinated marketing effort. After all, the goal of marketing your urban forestry program is to achieve real results. Today's first presenter is Lori Kaufman. Lori is Director of Communications at Tree People. She manages Tree People's media, publications, public relations, and website activities. She has over 10 years of experience working with nonprofit organizations in areas including community self-reliance, sustainable development, organic farming, homelessness, youth at risk, and children of incarcerated parents. Lori has taught tree planting and organic gardening to youth and senior citizens in California and Hawaii's Big Island. She has written for the Journal of the Society of Municipal Arborists, The Daily Breeze, Southern Sierran, Santa Monica Mirror, and Resurgence Magazine. She is currently producing a series of videos about tree people and worked on the 1995 award-winning video, Hawaii in Translation, Vision for a Sustainable Future. And we're happy to welcome Lori.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jared. And I hope you all are getting ready for a great holiday season and that you're getting everything you need for your organizations. So I'm going to be talking about branding. And so we all have a lot of different ideas about what branding means. So given the amount of time, I'm going to try to get through as much of this as I can. And if you have questions afterwards, you're more than welcome to ask them to the group, or if you like, you can also email me separately. So building and positioning your brand. Take a look at this. These are brands. Some say, and I heard this at a training I was at, that children today can identify more brands than they can native plants in their neighborhood or in their bioregion. So you know what all of these are. Take a moment. You've got Q-tips, you've got Oreos, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, etc. So my goal with Tree People is to have Tree People and community forestry, so the tree, as common in people's minds as some of these brands. Now, I know that's a crazy goal, but we have to shoot really high if we're really going to get our work done as community foresters. So, and we'll talk later at the very end about what does it mean to rebrand a tree. So let's move through this slide. So effective branding. Branding is not just for corporations. It's also for nonprofits. Effective branding creates what we would say transactions, or some kind of exchange that happens. It overcomes the masses of everyone just sort of looking the same. That's why we have this little person who's standing out. And it also creates a platform for your sustained leadership in your community. So we really want to focus on what branding is. But also know, as you look at this slide here, that there's some branding. Remember during the Tylenol scare many years ago, the Tylenol brand was really at risk of going down in flames when there was some tainted product. And this isn't an opportunity to talk about that case study, but let's take a look here just for a moment. You can revisit the slides later. Our goal is the halo effect. And what we want for you guys and for my organization as well is for the businesses out there and for the community members who will be donors or volunteers to really see your halo and want to be part of your halo. And that gives them bragging rights. It makes them feel good. It makes them want to commit their limited donor dollars, and it makes the businesses want to partner with you rather than perhaps someone else. So here's what a brand is not. It's not a logo. Here's some logos. It's not a tagline. There's a couple taglines in here as well. It's not a campaign. It's not a mission statement. And it's not your vision or your value statement. Okay? But what is a brand? So a brand is actually a promise, and it's also behavior. It's your personality and style. It's a bit ineffable, if you will. It's an expression of the relationship between you and your audience, whatever that audience is. And you know we have different audiences. We have our high donor audience. We have our volunteer audience. We also have our staff as an audience. We want them to have a buy-in to your brand. So when people encounter your brand as a community forestry group, what are they left with? What's their takeaway? What they're left with is an emotional, from the business perspective, of why to buy, or from a nonprofit perspective, of why to donate, or why to volunteer, or for staff, why to really work for you, why to go the extra yard. Emotional why to buy that moves the purchase decision from the side of the brain that's thinking to the side of the brain that's feeling. So we don't want, a brand is not rational. Think about when you go to the supermarket and you pick up your favorite ketchup or your favorite ice cream or your favorite cereal from when you were a kid. Mostly it's because you have some kind of feeling or relatedness to that product. Or it could be that you really like Heinz better than another ketchup, but why is that? So your objective for your nonprofit is to clarify and differentiate your forestry group from other nonprofit organizations in your community. Perhaps it's from other tree groups, but it might be actually from from the local music nonprofits, from the kid nonprofits, from the health nonprofits. You also want your brand, your company, your nonprofit to stimulate interest and participation from the individuals and businesses in your community. You want to be appropriately disruptive. So we wouldn't recommend that you do like a hip hop or some kind of edgy tilt to your brand, but you do want to be a little pushy in a non-confrontational way. You also, your objective for your brand is you want to attract and retain donors, partners, volunteers, and the public. You want to retain the best employees. You want to have that brand and employee loyalty with your company. And you also want to increase investment with some of your donors. So how do we know if you've been effective? This is our approach. We want to have a feeling of inclusion. We want our donors to also support other nonprofits and other organizations as well as our own. It's really not about pushing anyone out. We really want inclusion. We know we've been effective if people say that Tree People is a heart-centered kind of organization. That's one of our goals. It might not be one of your goals, but you do want to approach the feeling side of the brain. You want to definitely be separated out from the other nonprofits. You want people to know exactly what you do, and you also want to create a sense of home. So where do you start? I'm going to talk a little bit about how you proceed, and then I'll talk to you about how we've done it here at Tree People. So you want to focus on your positive attributes and values of your nonprofit, of your tree group. You want to also remember that you're not just planning for 3 months. You really want to take a maybe 3 or 5 year view of where you want your brand, your business, your company to be. And you also want to begin with defining your tangible assets, your attributes, and your values. And that's how you're going to have the discovery process unveil and show your brand essence. So I realize I'm going kind of quickly. So brand essence, what the heck is that? It needs to be defined in one word. So Nike, I'm just supposing because I'm not in their meetings, but the Just Do It campaign, that came out of an essence of unstoppable. Perhaps that's what Nike's essence is. You guys would know as much as I would. So Burger King, if their brand essence was individuality, then perhaps the campaign that came out of that was Have It Your Way, and I'm probably dating myself from when I was a kid. And if your brand essence is self-reliance, and then YouTube would have their campaign about broadcast yourself. So now that's just an example of others, but we're not operating in corporate America. They are. We're operating in the nonprofit field. So to get started, you also want to look at what we are calling the SWOT analysis. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And you want to look at that from what would consumers say, what would government say, and what would businesses say. And you do this individually. You could also do it as a team. We're currently at Tree People in the midst of a large strategic branding process with a company we're working with, and we sit down every few weeks with them and with our management team and some other staff, and we've gone through a values process. We've gone through SWOT analysis. We've gone through a lot of these processes to actually come up with what are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and what are some of the threats or challenges that are facing us. One of the things that I always like to hold in my mind is the universe is abundant. There's enough for all of us. Even in these economic times that we're all feeling, there's enough for all. And so that last word, the T, the threat, please remember that we're all working together, especially in the environmental movement and the public health movement as well, because public health and the environment are so connected. So you're probably familiar with this SWOT analysis. So let's take a look at how Tree People how we're doing our brand assessment currently. So we're working with a company. You don't have to work with a company that you're paying. You might be able to find someone to do this as a volunteer, and you could also do this on your own. So you want to do an assessment. You want to say, who are we? So at Tree People, we have a very strong brand awareness here in Los Angeles County and the region. We have 30-plus year history. We're very liked among environmental groups. We're a leading nonprofit here. We're very successful at what we do, especially working with volunteers and engaging them. We have a very soft approach. We're friendly. We're low-key. We're low-tech. And we have an educational program we're focused on children, both with our environmental ed and forestry work. And we also have impressive past accomplishments. However, there is a limited perception in the community about who we are and what we do. Most people think that we only work with kids, we only work with trees, and we have this great park that we get to take care of, and you could go hiking there. We've done sandbagging and emergency rescue work in the past, so some people from 20 years ago, they think we're still doing that. A lot of people aren't aware of our recent programs, and a lot of our materials and messaging is out of date, and there's still folks out there who think we're a bunch of hippies. So that's the limited assessment of who people think we are. So that's what we're up against. If we really, if our aim and our goal is to create functioning community forests in every neighborhood of Los Angeles and to share our work here in LA as a model for the world and as a model for the region and the nation, then we've really got to make some changes in what our brand is so people really see us as leaders and working with some wonderful colleagues as well. And that would be you guys. So as a senior staff and some others, we then did a big brainstorming session. We divided into groups and we looked, what are our values? So we had about 30 or 40 different values, and then we all worked together. We said, okay, well, let's come up with a list. This is some of our lists. Our values are dependability, integrity, sustainability, being visionary, excellence, innovation, and community building. There's a lot more, but these are just some of them. You may see your own values in here, and I hope that you do. Where we're at currently in our process is we're coming up with that one value of who we are and what we're doing. And we're still in process with that, but this will give you a sense of where we're going right now. We also took a look at who were we then? Where do people perhaps think about us as they think of we're a bunch of hippies? Well, you can see some nice clothing styles here. They think we work with kids. They think we're just this kind of cute, cuddly, warm-hearted tree planting organization. And you may have that as well, and that's actually wonderful. You can't buy that. You can't buy that goodwill perception. But we're a lot more than that. And here's who we are now. So I'm going to flip back and forth. So here's backwards, and here's where we are today. So you'll notice, I'm going to flip back one more time, there's a building on the right. It's like this long barn. It kind of looks like an old rundown rat-infested trailer, which it was. Well, now, some of what we do now is we help produce demonstration projects that show if you're using forest mimicking technologies, what can you do? Well, you can create a cistern, because a cistern is, for us, based on that perfect model of the tree and all the roots and the system that's underground. So we make these cisterns with the local agencies and partners we do. We still have our environmental education work and our tree planting, of course, and on the lower right, we also have a sustainable building here that's received LEED Platinum status, which is the highest rating that you can receive for green building. So people might not know this about us, and there's a lot of other work that we do as well. So we have that challenge of how do we go from the past into the present, but without losing our appeal and our affect. So just a few years ago, we started with refreshing our logo. So you can see our old logo, and here's our new one. We still kept our mark, but we did change the font, which is significant because the new font is actually a modern font. And if you're a typographer, you work with publications, which I know a lot of you do, you'll notice we have the sans serif font, so there's no little feet on the lower font. And we also went out, we purchased the font. It's called Neutra. It was expensive, and Neutra was a modern architect. And it has a certain feeling for us. It says we're fresh, we're new, we're the same old group that you've always loved, but look, we have a new face. So that's something that you guys might consider. It is a more affordable way to do to start to rebrand yourself, is to maybe revisit your logo. So that might be a cheaper way for you guys to achieve your goals. We're also, and I'm going to start wrapping up just because I want to make sure we save time for Constance. We're also doing something significant, which is we are rebuilding our website. We're showing our new site will really reflect our current brand and our goals and objectives, and some new language as well. So our current site is actually great. People love it. They can find their way around. But we actually want it to do more than what it can currently do in terms of the look and also what it can deliver. So part of our branding, new branding, is to actually create our new website. So here's the home page of our new site. I'm going to go back so you can just take a look at this. Old, new. I'm going to do one more time. Old and new. I encourage you guys to visit our site. We're going to be launching our new site on January 3rd. And for us, we really wanted to show who we are. And perhaps we've succeeded. I think we have. Perhaps we have some room for improvement, and I know we do. But when people go online, which most of us do, you really want them to get who you are. And the only way you can do that is if you know who you are. And that's why you do an assessment of your values, an assessment of your strengths and your weaknesses, your essence, who you are, who you're not. And you can do that also with some focus groups. Volunteers can come in, board members, and then you ask them questions. Who do you think we are? When you think of your organization, what comes to mind? And that's how you can actually start turning your little tree boat in the direction and the shores that you want to head to. And I don't want to fool you guys. It's a lot of work, but it's really important, especially if you want to start to bring in more donor dollars and start to, or whatever your goals are for your organization. So I'm going to start to wrap up, and I want to share some of these online resources with you. The first is SmartMeme. They've got a lot of resources online. They work with sort of hard-hitting activist groups, but they really focus on storytelling. Now, we're not a hard-hitting activist group here at Treat People. Not at all. We're very middle of the road. However, when we look at our story, our myth, if you will, that's really important. Our myth includes we were started by teenagers in the early 1970s. That appeals to a lot of people. Please consider what your story is, what your myth about your organization, because that goes into the brand. So there's a site there. Also, there's an article. There's many articles on allaboutbranding.com. Fenton Communications has some nice resources as well. And then Brand New World is a really great book written by Scott Bedbury, and he worked for Starbucks, and I think he worked for Nike as well. And you can get that on this site or Amazon or wherever. And then there's also that book, Branding for Dummies. So there's a lot of resources out there. I would encourage you to educate yourself first before you go out and start looking to hire people, because you really do need to be as much of an expert as possible. You're certainly an expert about your organization, about your brand, but before you go start spending money, see what you can do on your own. If you're able to write grants, perhaps, or get some underwriting, then definitely find someone or someone who can help elevate your brand and elevate your thinking about your brand so that you can achieve your goals. And I'll just wrap up by concluding with what I said early in my presentation was we're looking to rebrand a tree in people's minds. So we all know what trees do. Air, water, shade, crime protection, prevention, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, energy efficiency, increasing property values. We also know that trees do a lot underground in terms of capturing and cleaning stormwater. A lot of people don't know that infrastructure, that smart green infrastructure benefit. And we're looking to, here at Tree People, is really rebrand the tree. And we would encourage you all in your communities to also think about how can we elevate what a tree means to everyone. It's more than beauty. And it's a lot more than perhaps we even know of, because you have to really go out and ask people what do they think a tree means to them beyond poetry and beauty. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Sorry for the rush. I just wanted to get in as much as I could. Please know that we here at Tree People so appreciate the work that all of our sister and brother tree planting groups are doing out there, and we look forward to seeing your branding efforts so we can all elevate our work. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lori. Can the operator open the lines, please?
Yes, thank you. At this time, if you'd like to ask a question, please press *1. You will be prompted to record your name. Your name is required to introduce your question. Once again, to ask a question, please press *1. One moment, please.
Great. And participants can ask a question either via the phone, or you can type a question in online to the Q&A section of the online presentation, and I can come on the line and read it for you if you'd prefer it to happen that way. And I guess I want to start by saying that we do a monthly survey to ask members just to find out more about what they're doing and how we can improve our services. And well, we're getting ready to send out the December survey, but leading up to it, I was going through Lori and Constance's presentations and being like, oh my gosh, I totally need to update our survey to, take into account that kind of wording, and like that's the right way to ask the question. So personally, thank you very much.
You're
welcome. But I want to start with the trust aspect, because one of the things that we found out about ACT members is that a large majority of them use one nursery for all of their trees, and that it essentially goes back to trust. And that struck me as that's branding. Something those nurseries are doing says to our organizations, trust us. And I'm wondering, at Tree People, do you use, largely one nursery, or just, a couple nurseries? And, is there some elements of trust there? And that's sort of thinking about how to frame this in terms of, a lot of times it's easier for, for certainly for me, but I'm thinking for other people too, to be able to put it in perspective of what they really know. So, people know working with their nursery.
We work with a few nurseries. Certainly when we're working with the City of Los Angeles and their tree program, we use the city nursery. But there's some people here, as your individual brands to consider, there's some people at the nursery that we really like to work with, and I'm sure it's true for everyone. And so that person's brand, that they're helpful, or they'll let us do what we need to do without really following us on our heels, or they let us take our time. That personal brand is important as well. So we do work with a few nurseries. In particular, there's a native plant nursery that we love to work with, and we worked with them here in our park to bring in a bunch of native plants. So I think it's probably true, Jerry, for all of us that we have our loyalties. Perhaps it's because they're easy to work with, or they give us a great price, or we've always done it that way. But usually it's because of for whatever reason, their brand or their customer service is reflecting of their brand. And I think we're probably just like everyone else, and that it really is about trust, and that's the trust that when we have our citizen foresters using those trees and they have success with those trees, that trust is supported. But I do want to share my stepson. We did a tree planting at his charter school, and we got a bunch of free trees from, we were here, in Hollywood, so there's something called green sets, and they've got trees that are left over from commercial shoots, so that they hold on to them to maybe use to dress a set or an event. So we got a bunch of those trees donated, and as we're trying to pull them out of the pots, And they were probably about pretty big trees, not 24-inch box, but a little bit smaller. They were all root bound, all of them, and we had to actually cut the pot off of the root ball. It was crazy. We made kindergartners try to, just waiting and waiting and waiting for us to get these trees liberated, and they almost all died. Almost all of them died. The ones that did survive were ones that we got from another nursery that were not root bound. So trust with our citizen foresters is really important because they don't want their trees to die, either do we. So they're looking to us to keep those trees alive. So that's actually something from a public relations perspective and also from a staffing and resources perspective that we really have to manage now with that particular school because most of the trees are dead. So that's really unfortunate. Most of the time, free isn't free, as we all know.
On the flip side of that, how do you bridge people's initial feelings? Some people, I imagine it's a small minority, but the initial feelings of some people that they just don't need what you're selling.
Well, we really try to focus on people who want to work with us because there's a lot of people here in LA, so that's really it hasn't been our problem so much. However, the area that I personally struggle with that, and perhaps others have as well, is when we're trying to get celebrities to work with us to endorse our brand, perhaps come out to a tree planting event, tree care event, or a special event fundraiser that we're doing. That's usually where we'll get a no, and that's when we realize, wow, we thought our brand was doing great, but actually some of these folks have never even heard of us, and of course many have. But that's the biggest area of growth for us is getting ourselves more well known with the celebrity community and having them get involved beyond just, if we're lucky, having them write a check, having them actually come out to an event because then we can get media and press around that. So that's really the biggest area that we struggle with, personally, that I struggle with.
Okay. Does the operator have any questions in queue?
I show no questions.
Okay. Well, let's move on to Constance's presentation, and if anyone has questions remaining for Lori, we'll open up the lines after Constance's presentation for either presenter. Thanks, Lori. So our next presenter is Constance Crawford. As Outreach Services Director for the nonprofit Sacramento Tree Foundation, Constance creates and implements the organization's strategic marketing, public relations, advertising, and advocacy goals. She graduated from the University of California, Davis in 2001 with a degree in English and Communication. She is currently finishing her graduate studies at the California State University, Sacramento, to receive her Master of Arts degree in Public and Political Communication. Constance is a certified professional behavioral analyst and enjoys conducting consumer research to inform communications objectives. Sorry for tripping on all that. Constance, we're happy to have you.
Thanks so much, Jared. And I also want to just take a quick second to thank Lori. I'm sure most of you that are listening today have been listening to this entire series as I have, and I've learned so much. Thank you very much, Lori. And I even find myself on a weekly basis at this point going to the Tree People website to say, what was it that she said about her ads? And I can put them in there, can't I? So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm here for you guys. Just let me know if you need anything.
Appreciate that. And like Lori said, it definitely is about sharing and collaborating. So what you're going to see here today is actually one of the worst PowerPoints you're ever going to see. It's exactly what they tell you not to do, which is a lot of text on a page. And so I'm hoping that we can focus a little bit more on the conversation and use the slides as just a backup. What the slides really are is the findings from some focus group research that we just conducted. And we finished this research as late as the last of October. So we're still even digesting this information. So before I even jump into what the information is, I wanted to talk a little bit about why we conducted it, and that's specifically because of our brand. And that's why Jared actually invited us to be a part of this webcast. Like Lori was saying, your brand is, if you will use the euphemism of a boat, you really are navigating down a river of sorts. And every once in a while, it's really great to check in and make sure that the direction that you're steering in is the correct one. And the Tree Foundation this year launched a campaign to plant 5 million trees in our region. And that was a new thing for us. We definitely had not done that thing on that scale before and realized that for our communications at least, that meant pretty much a new audience for us.
So it was time to step back and say, okay, what are we communicating and who are we communicating it to, and are we going to be effective in this campaign? So we did exactly what Lori said as part of the plan. You sit down and start with your base. What do you know about yourselves? And we did a SWOT analysis, the entire organization. And one of the things that we realized was, well, in our region, we know our region, and that means that 80% of the land that we want those trees to go on is going to be private property or owned by individual homeowners or business owners. And so we sat and looked and said, okay, are we prepared to go with our best brand and our best arguments to this audience? And when we really looked at it, we realized we don't know. The answer could be yes, the answer could be no. We could have some successes, but definitely not on the scale we're expecting or hoping. So because of that, we realized, okay, let's start with a baseline. Let's do some consumer research. We need to hear the feedback, and exactly as Lori was saying, we need to talk to the people who know us to see what they think of us. Do they see us the way we want to be seen and the way we see ourselves? Do they understand what we're saying? Could we be saying it better in order to move them around this goal that we have? So in October, we pulled together some focus groups. And I'm going to go through these slides, and I'm sorry that I'll go through them so quickly. But again, the idea is the kind of information in here is what we're looking for. And you can also see this later. And I'd like to offer, if anybody wants to see the entire report, which Jared did see, it is 57 pages of exactly this, but it's great information. So what we really wanted to do is pull these people in to around these 4 key areas and these objectives, which was, let's figure out what their experience with us is currently. So what is that relationship that we have with people that we work with that we're successful with? And do they trust our brand? And we're assuming some things here, and we wanted to see, gosh, are our assumptions even fair? We wanted to test some of our marketing materials because everything that we do in all of our communications that's being sent out of there, being sent out of our office, is part of our message. And then we also wanted to hear in their words, now that you know our goal, how would you say it? How would you want to be talked to? And what kind of arguments would move you? So we sat down with those 4 goals and identified some audiences that we wanted to be talking to in the future to ask them those. And this is just the scientific research methodology. You'll see that consumer research and qualitative research doesn't tell you how everybody feels, and you can't say things like most people think that, but what we could know is that the language that they use is the common kind of language you would likely to hear from people of their demographic. So we asked them, we wanted to warm them up, and we asked them some things of, gosh, in your neighborhoods, what's important to you? When you're all homeowners, and I should probably make this distinction here, we had 2 separate groups. Group of homeowners, people that actually identified themselves as owning their home, and then a group of volunteers that we got through our own databases, people that had been volunteering with us either recently or for a long time. And we approached them just slightly differently, but the results you'll end up seeing were so congruent, and what they had, their feedback for us was so consistent that it just informs your communication without a doubt. There's no gray area to say, gosh, we don't know what we learned. You'll see very clearly that they all said one thing. So the conversation was, gosh, do you like trees? Would your neighborhood need trees? And of course, everybody said, yes, trees are great. We asked them in their own words, how would you describe trees? What's great about trees? And this slide here speaks exactly to that. They're using words like it's calming, peaceful, restful. They also are cool, and they make my yard more attractive, things like that. And we asked them to draw a picture of trees. And I think Lori was speaking to this a little bit about branding the tree. What is it about trees that's so appealing to you? And this picture, I think, speaks so clearly to it. A gentleman drew this. This is a big tree providing a lot of shade and some recreation. You'll see a little tire swing. There's also some nature in there. There's some trees. And he's able to rest and relax and enjoy the outdoors because of this tree. So we thought, gosh, that's just so informing. They do see all these benefits, but what's lacking here has been kind of the conversation that the Tree Foundation has been pushing out there, which is there's a $7 billion net benefit to an improved canopy, and we could reduce carbon footprints, etc. Those are good arguments, but that's not what this audience wanted to hear. That's not what they think of and what they tell their friends about trees. So this matrix, which is a little bit complex, and I don't want to get too hung up in the numbers, was intended to show us what is important to these groups about what we're doing and about trees. And the general trend was everybody says that what's important about trees is how beautiful they are and what they add to my yard and what they enable me to do. So they enable me to have a picnic with my neighbors. They enable me to have a barbecue on a hot day, whereas if I didn't have a tree, it would have been too sunny to barbecue. So the breakdown was basically the assumptions we're going from like beauty is important to all the groups. Comfortable shade was more important to people that didn't have it. People who live in newer developments that don't have these big shady trees notice the lack and are really striving for that big canopy tree. So they are a very keen audience that we should be speaking to and really identifying them as a subsegment of homeowners with very little tree canopy. And then one of the key things we learned from volunteers, which was really fun to hear, it was really great to watch these focus groups and see the volunteers talk about bigger picture. Homeowners are really concerned, of course, with what's going on in my own backyard, but volunteers were there because of the bigger picture. They wanted to be helping the environment, and that was an exact quote that was used throughout, help the environment, help the environment, help the environment. And as we were listening to these focus groups and trying to think, what does this mean for our brand? What does this mean for our communications? What does this mean for our marketing materials? You hear little things like that and realize that can be built into everything that we do. So we have a choice here, and we could be saying things like, you can reduce your carbon footprint by planting trees, or get involved in tree planting because it's really great and it's going to reduce our bad air quality days by 50%. Whereas what these consumers are telling us is that's not the right tack for us. That tack could be right for a different audience, but what we would like to hear is come out and volunteer to help the environment. You'll have fun. It's a good time to get out and volunteer, and homeowners want to hear, what is it going to mean for my yard? It's going to mean a beautiful tree for my yard. So it sounds, when I say these things, sometimes I think, gosh, I'm talking to a bunch of tree experts on this panel, and they're all thinking, we know this stuff. This isn't new to us. We know that trees are beautiful and comfortable and shady. But I think until we're really, oh goodness, I'm logged out, I apologize. Until we're really kind of reminded with this research, and we actually talk to people that we're working with on a regular basis, sometimes it's easy to forget, and that's why I really enjoyed listening to Lori, just being reminded of these things. So the rest of these slides really speak to just some quotes that the homeowners came up with and some of the volunteers when we asked them things like, why would you plant a tree? Tell us in your own words. And these are things that I would cut and paste into, membership appeals or advertisements. I would plant a tree because it keeps my bills down. They're beautiful, and it's very pleasant to be outside, and I love the shade they provide. I'm thinking, gosh, that's how I'm connected to this homeowner, and this is the way they want to be spoken to and about. And I just do this one because I love it. We asked them all to draw a picture of trees, and a woman actually drew a picture of her front door, and it's red and it's hot. And she said, this is my front door, and it faces the sun. And when I come home, it's so hot I can't even touch it, because she doesn't have shade trees. So she knows it's all about shade. It's all about trees in her yard. So, and then this again confirms that volunteers were saying, we volunteer because it feels good. So we volunteer because it feels good, and planting trees has an additional benefit, but that's where they start. So that really reminded me, it's a good thing to remind them of that. So, of course, a big part of the research we wanted to, the reason we wanted to do the research was to discover, okay, what do you think of the Tree Foundation? And what do you think of our brand and our relationship? And we heard really great feedback, of course. It was really nice to hear that they're having fun, they're having great experiences, they like being treated like, they're the boss during that day. And that was great to hear and great research to have to really bring back to our office and say, okay, we're doing these things right. We need to keep doing these things. And sometimes I know it's hard to hear that, like, gosh, well, I need to learn something new when I do research, or I need to learn something that's really going to turn my head. But some of the things that really turn your head are reminding yourself we really need to keep doing some of these things in order to perpetuate the brand that they really appreciate. So things that we're doing right were great. And then I don't want to spend too much longer on the words. I'll get right to what this means for our brand and in terms of shifting our brand a little bit. But one of the things I was worried about is that because tree planting has science as a base, I mean, we are biologists, we are arborists, and we do kind of tend to default to the science of trees. I wanted to test our science language with these people to say, gosh, are we turning you off? And maybe you're starting to distrust our brand because we're talking over your head or using words that just don't appeal to you. So that's why we actually took some time to test some words and say, when I say this word to you, do you like it or not like it? We didn't ask them if they understood it. We didn't ask them if they use it. We just said, do you like it or not like it? And just some of the top level findings were that they really gravitated toward a lot of the language I heard Laura using today that Tree People really focuses on, which is, being outside in the lush, natural setting and working with nature, those kinds of things, versus the science or maybe some terms that are bigger that just don't have everyday use, like canopy, sustainable stewardship. Really got some people confused. They were wrinkling up their noses and saying, if you're trying to get me to come out and do something with you and you use this kind of language, I won't trust you as much. So we said, gosh, that's a great finding. That's one of those things that really makes you turn your head and say, let's take a look at what we're doing and then make sure that we're talking to these people in language that they commonly use. So the reason that we did this is to come down to this implications of what this really means for our communication strategies and what we're going to do for our marketing. But in general, what we really heard in terms of the theme of the research was that we know who we are as an organization, but our brand right now has really been directed at a different audience. And it's definitely a function of being in Sacramento. We're in the capital of the biggest state in the union and really close to the legislators, if you will. So we've been really directed at elected officials and decision makers in a lot of what we're doing. And that made sense for our overall organization strategic plan of getting regional leadership on board with our Green Print initiative, getting them signed on to support trees, and to realize and to start even funding the importance of trees. But now the real work is somewhere else. Now that we have that strong foundation, we are turning our boat a little bit, if you will. So it's time to point that boat at a new audience, which is with homeowners. And what they're telling us is, your brand as it is now isn't quite for us. And we need these small changes in order to be able to hear you and to want to move with you and build a relationship with you around your goal of 5 million trees. So what we've taken from this is really, gosh, it's time for us to soften up a little bit. It's time for us to get back to our roots and really remember that we have fun when we go out and plant trees. We have fun. We're fun to work with. We like working with other groups. And that's what we really need to focus on. It's fun. We're really making a lasting impact that's beautiful, and anybody can do it. So a lot of those things will be woven into what we're doing. And, of course, this is a long process that doesn't really go quickly. But if anybody knows Ray Trethewey, and I can assume that most of us do, one of his main tenets in life is always that he is going to invest in the people around him. So when we talk to him about branding, he may not hear, and he always laughs at me and just says, I don't know, Constance, you tell me, you're the expert. But what he really wants to say is, I want our entire organization, of course, to be brought along in any of this. And that means for us, individual investment and individual training. So taking this research to our entire staff and actually letting our entire staff be our advertising and marketing strategy. These people are going to understand who we are and what we do and go out and say that every day and consistently. And that's what really helps move our brand forward. So I'd like to wrap things up with that. I know I did tend to wander, and I apologize for that. It's definitely a topic I'm excited about, so I tend to go down many avenues at once, but I'd love to open things up for questions.
Great. Thanks, Constance. And if the operator can open up the lines, please.
Thank you. Once again, if you'd like to ask a question, please press *1. You will be prompted to record your name. Again, to ask a question, please press *1.
And again, you can ask questions online through the question and answer section, and I can come on the line and read them for you. And I want to start off by asking some questions about the internal process, because I get the sense that a lot of nonprofits' attitudes and values are and basically summed up in, I'm here to make a difference in the world, and branding and marketing and communications, just might be a distraction from that. So how do you get past that internally? How do you justify spending money on this? How do you convince staff and board members that this sort of process can be our friend, whether it's talking about the bigger difference or standing out from the crowd or efficiency? What is it that internal discussion looks like?
Yeah, that's interesting that the question was started that way, because I've had such a different experience here at the Tree Foundation, and that is that our staff was actually the ones asking for this kind of thing. And they may not have known that what they're asking for was a strategic branding or an essence or those kinds of things. But what they do come back with is, they're out in the field every day talking with people that are interested, that are primed and ready. And they're going, gosh, what words do I use? How do I tell them that what they're doing is so important? Because I'm talking to this woman who is so primed and active, and she's excited, and at this point I just want to hire her to work at the Tree Foundation. And I wish I knew the right words, the right frame to tell her exactly what it is that we do, how we do it, and the best ways that she could do the next steps. And we hear that consistently. Everybody's saying, gosh, not only do we want to know how to say it, but we want to know that everybody's saying the same thing. Because like Lori mentioned in the past, you can put a frame around things, and that's a great idea. And it's important that you put a frame around things. But if everybody starts with the same framework, then you could move into your frame of focusing in on the one topic that's appropriate for that person. So we've done a lot of this research, and our next steps are going to be actually an all-staff training to say, now that we've spoken to the people that you are speaking with every day, here's what we think is the great way to start your conversation with them, and then here's your supporting, next steps in the conversation.
Okay. So we were joking a little bit before the call started that, some of the questions that ACT even asks about our own information, we're asking the people who are already participating. And so, maybe we're missing a segment of the population who isn't participating. And so, somehow we're not reaching the right group. And I wanted to talk a little bit about market share, I guess. And, is any of the discussion focused on maybe not necessarily who you're not reaching, but including who you're not reaching? And, I guess rather than having a metric like, like we want to increase attendance at our events by 20% in the next year, having something that more looks at, how can we reach the right audience?
That's a great question. I think we're all striving for the answer to that. And one of the things that, one of the questions that constantly gets floated around in marketing is, why are we preaching to the choir, or we're only getting low-lying fruit? And the answer that I always come back with is, you have these segments of audiences that are ready and willing and just, they're like, invite me to the party, I'll show up. And then, of course, the next segment that's a little bit further out is, I can't quite hear you, but if you speak loudly enough, I might hear you. So I really don't think that you could spend a lot of your time, you wouldn't be effective spending the majority of your time speaking to the people who aren't ready to come to the party or ready to listen. So identifying those market segments, like you said, is really important. Those people who are ready to listen. And what we learned in our research is people in new developments, they don't have a tree, they're ready to listen.
Okay. Here's
it may not have been the best answer, but yeah.
Can you have multiple brands and focuses? Can you be tree planters and tree advocates?
Well, I might answer that question a little bit differently, and I'd also invite Lori to answer that question as well. Multiple brands, I think the answer I would give is no, not effectually. Your brand is just everything you do, like dependability. So we are dependable. You wouldn't want to have a separate self, if that makes sense, because the dependability comes from the consistency. So that's just the one thing that you always are, and that is your core value of you. But you can have multiple marketing tracks. And I know Lori's done this in the past too, very successfully, which is, you have a marketing tract of tribute trees toward a specific audience that said, we want this thing, we want tribute trees. So you build that frame for them. Lori, did you want to answer that as well?
Hi, it's like a sub-brand, but this is the issue of multiple brands is something that we're coming up against. This is why we're in this big rebranding process now, because we have our sort of sustainable cities work that's sprung out of our tree planting efforts, and it's kind of been its own brand, its own unit, and we're really looking to integrate those two. So it really helps to just have one. Also, just so you know, like our founder, Andy Lipkis, who hopefully some of you have gotten to know, like he kind of has his own brand. So that's something else to think about is actually branding your founder or your president or your executive director as someone who maybe has charisma or is really great with the media or is an author or has somehow put themselves out there for better or for worse as an expert. But the sort of the sub-branding, like with our tree dedications program, or as you were saying, Ken, it's your tribute program, that's like a sub-brand. But if dependability is your overarching essence, then that sub-brand comes under there. We all need to be really careful to not have these sort of projects that sit on top of our brand, sort of like if you're in California, the Winchester Mystery House. It's like this big house that has all these extra rooms that go nowhere and doors that lead nowhere. You really want to keep your brand as tight as possible. So even a sub-program can help that, but you just want to be real careful.
It's true, and we've struggled with that at the Tree Foundation. If anybody's heard of our Greenprint initiative, for a while we honestly were like two different organizations in the eyes of people outside of the office. It was the Greenprint is doing things. Oh, the Tree Foundation goes to those meetings, and we're thinking, oh wow, it took us a long time to rope that back in under our umbrella and say the Greenprint is something that we are doing as an organization. So, like Lori said, it can actually get a little bit out of control. This is something that you really have an eye on when you're developing it.
Yeah, and just, if I could just add to that, something else that you all have probably experienced is people or groups want to partner with you because of your brand strength, which, for sometimes it can be like, well, is this an offer or is this more of an imposition? And so you have to really guard your brand, and that includes the kinds of folks you want to partner with. And usually it's not a problem, but sometimes, like with us here at Treat People, we're very middle of the road. We work with children. So we want to make sure we're not partnering with anyone who could be maybe a little too provocative or controversial because of our work with kids. We always want to protect that relationship and protect our brand, that we're a safe place to bring your kids. So that's something else to consider.
Okay, here's another question online. Do you have advice for new small community-based organizations that are ready to get their message and brand out, but don't have a lot of experience or resources to work with?
Candace, do you want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. And my advice is definitely to do your very own SWOT analysis. Know your strengths and lead with that. And that strength is also going to inform your essence to help you create that brand. So what is it that you want to be known for that you're really good at? Is a great place to start. I think the Sacramento Tree Foundation 27 years ago, we started as a beautification committee. And we knew that what we were here to do was to make our streets more beautiful. And so that's how they ran everything. It just said, trees are beautiful. We're a beautification committee. We can plant trees to make your street more beautiful. And that consistency helped them to grow their own awareness and come to a more mature place where they decided, well, maybe that's not exactly what we want to be known for anymore. We want to be known for more things. But that was farther down the road.
If I could just add to that, that was great. If you're like a startup tree group, I would say find the most well-respected, active Rotary Club in your community. And very often small towns and big cities have multiple Rotary Clubs. And see if there's a committee, a marketing committee, or someone there who wants to help you. Also, the chamber, there might be groups there who want to help with you guys with your marketing and your branding group. There may be an ad council. I would say always, you have to just be willing to be humble, throw yourself on the sword and say, okay, I need help. Who's the best and the brightest? And really start with God and work your way down, as one of my mentors once said. Be bold and ask the biggest ad firm or the biggest whoever, all the who's in Whoville, ask them and see if they're willing to give you an hour or a half a day, or have even some of their coordinators work with you on some programs. So just be bold and lead with your heart, and that's always worked for us and for me personally, and you'll be surprised at who's willing to help out.
Does the operator have any questions in queue?
I have one question. Susan Reich, your line is open.
My question is for Constance. I'm curious about who participated in the focus groups. Was it groups that were familiar with Sacramento Tree Foundation and trees in general, or was it regular consumers? And what size groups did you use?
We ran 4 groups. So 2 groups we identified as homeowners, and we differentiated them by homeowners that live in developments with lots of trees or developments with not a lot of trees. And when they were getting called to be invited to the focus groups, there was no discussion of this was going to be a focus group about trees, no discussion of this is about the tree foundation. So we didn't know how much they knew or if they knew us at all. And when we did bring them in, and there were a total of 8 in each group, it turned out consistently that out of each group, about 50% of them knew of the Sacramento Tree Foundation and had actually participated in one of our programs. And then the volunteers, those were from our own databases, so 100% of them, and there were 8 in each group as well, knew of us.
In Georgia, we did 2 similar focus groups, and in 2007. And contrary to what you found in Sacramento, the survey results showed that create your legacy, that concept was the most powerful, memorable, and motivating. Which was completely opposite from what you found.
Well, I guess I would say the complete opposite from what we found was, carbon footprint and air quality. Our groups did talk to legacy a lot. We were actually surprised, and who spoke more to it was actually youth. We had a group of just youth volunteers, and I was very surprised that they were the ones saying, I want to leave this memory. I want to go back and visit it. I want to see it when I'm older and take my kids. So it was a strong focus for them. I just didn't speak as much to it. I'm glad to hear that in Georgia. That's very similar. And the term legacy is interesting. We went back and forth about that actual term for a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Susan. So we are at the top of the hour, so we will go ahead and end the call. I want to thank everyone who participated. I'm going to put up the final slide. If everyone who's on the call can go out there and answer a couple questions real quick, this helps us to improve our programming. So the next webcast is on January 15th in 2009. It's the 4th part of this series on marketing and communications, and it is on advertising and promoting tree events. So for today, I want to thank our presenters, Constance and Lori. I want to thank all the participants who are on the line and our sponsors, the Home Depot Foundation and the USDA Forest Service. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. This concludes today's conference. You may disconnect at this time.